Please help me welcome to the stage Richard Cabral. Elvis Nolasco. Connor Jessup. Lily Taylor. Executive producer Michael J. McDonald. Executive producer and creator John Ridley. Felicity Huffman. Regina King. And the guy who ate the most backstage by far, Trevor Jackson. Joey Polari. And last but not least, Angelique Rivera. Thank you all for being here. I know how busy everyone is, and it's pretty incredible to have almost everyone on stage. We're missing Tim tonight, unfortunately, due to a family engagement, but he's here with us, and
yes,
we'll hopefully talk about him. He's incredible in the show, as you know. So the first question will be for John. It's a good place to start. I was interested to see in the documentary you talk about sort of reverse engineering season 2 to hit the different notes and voices and themes that you hadn't had a chance to cover in season 1. So I'm wondering, what were your biggest priorities on that front when you sat down to create a list of the notes you wanted to hit, and what were they that you didn't seem to hit in season 1?
Well, first of all, thank you, everybody, for coming out this evening. It's deeply appreciated. As you say, we're busy. I know everybody here is busy, and everybody's competing for time and attention, and it's a rainy Friday. Who drives around in LA on a Friday? So
there's
thank you very much.
Drink. That's why they're.
Oh, well, bars open. And let me also, just before I get started, just say it's really very special to be back with everybody. I was commenting earlier outside with everybody that our run last year started later, and so when we started seeing each other again, it didn't feel like such a big gap. But what these performers did and what they represent, it's the tip of a pretty amazing spear that represents probably one of the most emotional writers' rooms I've ever been in, probably one of the most artisanal groups in terms of a crew that I've had the opportunity to work with, and in service of a story that honestly, I think when Michael and I sat down and started talking about it, when we even had a concept there might be a second season, there were aspects of storytelling that we really wanted to get to, and when we arrived there, we just thought it was a story that was provocative in the right ways, it was urgent, but that a lot of people would just go, okay, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to know anything about it, I just want to turn away. And the way that people have embraced the second season, the way they've appreciated it in terms of the performances and also in terms of the story have been absolutely amazing. And within that, the things that we wanted to talk about was definitely family. Last year in the first season, a lot of it was so distant and about families falling apart. This was about families coming together. It was about parents, it was about kids, it was definitely about orientation, it was about young people trying to find themselves, and adults and parents trying to both do the best they could for their kids, but then ultimately understanding that sometimes the best you can do for your child is just let it go and realize they're their own people. So it was tough, but I don't know that we could have done it without so many people understanding that they had to be in service of a story that was worth telling.
And I think this specific storyline, the events within the school and the assault, was this taken from real events? Were you inspired by, did you read a newspaper story and you sort of drew elements from reality, or was this completely you came up with this in the room?
Well, it was all born in the room, but people who came into the room and the conversations John and I started from real life things that were happening. A plethora of stuff was happening. John Krakauer had written that book, Missoula. There was a lot in the culture about rape and sexual assault on campuses, and so we all brought our own history of knowing these things. But it's not based on one specific incident. There's a lot of stuff that's out there that is not. And as we dug, it was shocking how many of these stories were in these small town newspapers that didn't get national attention, and that were just buried in these, the small papers in Kansas and Oregon and Ohio and stuff. So. That was all out there, but it wasn't born of just one specific moment or crime.
And I have one question for each of the actors, and hopefully each of you can weigh in, sort of offer a quick answer, whatever feels appropriate. But the series obviously masterfully flips stereotypes, whether it's skin color, whether it's class, whether it's educational opportunities. And I'm wondering, for each of you, maybe I'll start with Richard because you're closest, what theme or themes did resonate with you the most or the least? Was there something that really spoke to you, not necessarily just about your character, but about something in the show? Or was there something that was quite foreign to you that struck you as something, oh, that's interesting, I've never thought about that before? What impacted you the most?
I think the thing that stands out the most, and it just hit me because we don't talk about that, the rape with boys, and especially coming from a Latino culture, like that's one of the things, I mean, first of all, you're not supposed to be, it's not embraced to be homosexual, and then like for that to happen, like that is like definitely like you don't talk about, so that really hit me in a major way.
How about you?
I think for me it's the racial tension that exists in the storyline. You have a high school where at one point it was predominantly African American, but slowly but surely communities change, neighborhoods change, and you have an influx of a new community coming in. So of course the new housing, the new schools, the neighborhood is going to change. But it just really spoke to how racism is. We like to think that there's this blind curtain, and it still exists. And I think the way that John and the writers were able to bring that to the forefront so meticulously really resonated with me.
How about you, Connor?
There were a lot of parts of the show that I found, or a lot of themes in the show that I found intriguing, but I guess the one maybe that was the most, or one of the ones that was most relevant to Taylor, but also one of the ones that I found the most personally interesting was a willingness to explore the fluidity of sexuality, especially for teenagers, because TV's gotten much better at breaking out of a purely straight mold, but you still, when you see queer characters, it tends to be with a capital letter.
Right.
So it's not that often that you see characters who are in between, or who are questioning, or who are who one day feel one thing and the next day feel something else, right, which I think is probably much more accurate to most people's experience. Right. Gay, straight, bi, whatever it is, I think most people feel, especially when they're in adolescence, like they're confused in the truest sense.
And they're scared to talk about it.
They're scared to talk about it because they look at media and they look at the people around them and they look at the way this is portrayed, and they don't see anything that matches what they're feeling. And I think this helps that, at least in some small way.
Did you get a lot of fan feedback from people who said, this is exactly what I went through, thank you for this? Because I can imagine this probably spoke to a lot of people. I
got a couple really nice letters, like actual letters, which I didn't even know you could send anymore.
Young people write letters? Incredible.
That were, it's less about me and more about the show in general and what John and Michael were trying to do, expressing something along those lines of, thankfulness that this story was being told in this way. Because it's also, when you tell something like this, it's very easy. I think it's very fragile ground. It's very easy to misstep and actually harm the conversation, even accidentally.
Right.
So I think that was an enormous relief for me, that it seems like we hadn't done that. So yeah, it was very gratifying.
And Lily, as a parent, was there something that spoke to you about the themes that your character faced?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's empathy for parents that they're doing the best they can, and you know, I mean, if I, you know, I mentioned to Anne that she might want to listen to Taylor, but she didn't listen to me. You know, but you know, to have that empathy, and you know, I had a lot of parents coming up to me while the series was out, just thankful that someone was talking about parenting and social media and sexuality, and that we're, you know, you think you know one thing and the next day it changes, and what the hell do you do? How do you talk to them? How do you do any of it? And so I just love that John was willing to. I think John loves humans, you know, and I think he lets us make mistakes and knows we're going to make mistakes and try to figure it out and find our way. But none of it's done. All of it's done with empathy.
Right.
And so I just found people just appreciating the food coming back to them.
And it's also done without blame. There isn't any one person who's to blame in any scenario, which I think is very different for definitely broadcast television, but just these types of stories, there's usually a villain. There's usually someone who's, you know, by the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, great, I feel better because it was that person's fault. And actually, there's no resolution. And that's, unfortunately, or fortunately, that's what life is like. And Felicity, this was obviously such a departure from season one, an entirely new person, entirely new creation on your part. Aside from the newness of that, was there something that struck you as being potent or something that you identified with? Or was this a brand new character, someone you had never stepped into her shoes before?
Something I identified with?
Yeah, either with her or even just...
Really identified with black hair.
It's much better. It's definitely much better.
Did I identify with? Let me sidestep that for a second because I don't know how to answer it. So I'm going to answer the earlier question. Is that okay?
Sure.
Because I've been practicing in my head while everybody else has been talking. Okay, what I found new, shut up. What I found new was that you all been doing it too.
I just sat here and thought, please don't throw me a ball.
I know.
Ask me another question.
This is what was new for me, and this was from talking with John, actually, that I sort of accepted the kind of social milieu that we all accept that, oh, he's a politician. And you kind of go, oh yeah, he's a politician, yuck. And I was talking to John and he said, we don't do that with any other thing. We don't go, oh my God, he's such a doctor. You go, but he's a doctor. Oh my God, he acts like such a lawyer, but he's a lawyer. And so I know it's odd in this particular climate too with what's going on, but I had a newfound respect for politicians because what they are doing is, you know, for the common good, they are taking sort of they're taking everybody's opinion and trying to figure out what would be best for everyone. So everyone's going to have to compromise and everyone's going to lose a little and hopefully everyone will win a little. And that made me really endorse my character. And that was because one day I went to John and I went, does he have to call me a politician? And he said, why is that a bad thing? That was my answer.
Very well done. Very well done. How about you, Regina?
Oh, I gotta follow that one up. I guess for me, I mean, I can't really narrow it down to one thing. I mean, American Crime is a special show. It really is. I mean, I feel so lucky to be a part of it. So I will narrow it down to Terry and her family. And it was just great to be able to, you know, class is a big part of this show, and to be the family that we're the elitists in this situation and we're black. It was great to portray that because it does exist, but most people don't see it. Right. And it does actually exist. So it was really special to be able to tell that family story. And I don't want to say that, oh, she learned a lesson in the end, but you know, to be able to have that arc and it play out, it wasn't resolute, but it was, she realized everything that she built up to make things perfect. You can't control life. Right. And it was beautiful to play that. I mean, it every beat, you know, that last scene with my son here, I, you know, even when we did it, I got a little emotional.
And by the way, congratulations on your Emmy win last
Oh,
year.
thank
belated.
you.
I want to say congratulations on taking my answer because that's exactly what I was going to say. But no, I honestly do agree. I feel like that's something that's not portrayed, especially on TV or film. And so to be able to play a young black man that's articulate and that's not incarcerated, or that's not a gang member, and that's just trying to be a good person, a good man.
I think the thing for me, especially with Eric, was, and I think this is shared with Taylor as well, is the deep amount of shame that is explored within teenagers as they grow up and are trying to discover their sexuality. And with Eric particularly, the homophobia that comes with being gay for him is laced with so much homophobia and struggles for masculinity. And to see that explored within a sports context, within the class that he's in with his family, I think to swim in that gray area as a TV show, especially with teenagers in a very right time, that just astounded me.
It shows. It worked.
For me personally, my mom was a teacher and she's still in the school system, and my grandma was a principal and a teacher, so the education aspect of the show really hit home for me. I remembered conversations at the dinner table with my mom, you know, bringing work at home and talking about, you know, how there's no money in her program where she, you know, she wants to like do so much for these kids, but there's just not enough money in the public school system to do it. And I went to a school just very bizarrely similar to Marshall, very segregated. It was largely Hispanic and Black. And I was in this gray area because I grew up in Virginia around a lot of white people. So I didn't really fit in with the Hispanics because I didn't speak Spanish, and you know, I was just very different. And then, but you know, the blacks didn't accept me or the whites. So I was just like in this very weird space, and it was really difficult for me to like find this group, especially with a school that was so segregated, just like Marshall. And I found a lot of altercations that happened were racially based. And that's something that's not really shown on television or in film or anything about, you know, it's usually a black and white issue, but it's really much bigger than that. And I've seen it in my culture, and I've experienced it as well. So it hit home for me.
Right. And, oh yes. A moment that struck me in the documentary was John talking about the scene in the sexual assault nurse's room and the level of improv that you allowed your actor here to engage in, and sort of trusting him to just do what feels right. Well, she'll sort of, you know, list the actual protocol and react to that. And I'm wondering how many moments were there like that along the way that you said, okay, let's set aside the script for now, we want this to feel real. And for the actors, what personal things did you infuse in those moments that ended up working? Let me start with John.
Well, you know, I mean, the only thing I'll say about that, and I'll let the actors speak to it, one thing that we try to do when we can is to, rather than cast an extra playing a sexual assault nurse, the woman in the scene was a real sexual assault nurse. That's what she did every day, was dealing with folks. And we certainly had talked to people and we had a sense of how we wanted the scene to go, but ultimately we asked her, what would you do? What would you say? How would you conduct this interview? And they had talked and worked on it a little bit, but then ultimately we rolled the camera. And historically in American crime, when we have a scene, we tend to decide whose scene it is. And we tend to focus on that individual. We tend to not do a lot of coverage, but in that instance in particular, there was some coverage that we did, but once we got into the edit, there was no other way to play that scene other than to see a young man going from a moment of, you know, okay, I'm not sure how to engage, and this woman, her tone was in some ways almost ironic because she's so trying to reach a young person, but at the same time, you're walking them to a space where they're having to deal with something that is just extraordinary. And seeing that and seeing how it was played, you know, I think the scene was a minute and a half or so, and no cutting. There was nothing to cut to, other than to see both the actor and the character dealing with it. So, I mean, I'll let the actor speak to moments that may have stuck out to them.
And it was so effective too that we only see his face. We don't need to see her. She's this sort of, and I love too, there are so many moments where the authoritative figure is off screen, and we see the impact on whoever he or she's speaking to. It was very, very powerful.
I'll just say very quickly, and this is for me personally putting it together. I was just watching The Godfather, the epic cut, the 6-hour cut, and I've not. Trust me, I didn't watch it in 6 hours.
10 hours long, right?
You just realize that coverage is sort of this convention that came along like in the 80s.
True.
And it just became part of the studio process of get that, we'll figure it out later. And people that were just, people that I grew up admiring, they trusted their actors, they trusted the performers, they trusted what was there, and they trusted just shoot it and let it happen. So I think we've gotten in the space where there's an expectation of, well, you gotta go to that, you gotta go to that. And for us, I mean, it certainly starts with a writer's room that puts together scripts that are even less about the words on the page sometimes and more about the emotion, the emotional velocity of what's happening. Then it certainly becomes a crew that can frame that, but ultimately becomes about actors where, I can think of any number of scenes with any of these individuals, mother and son, that scene was 6.5 minutes with the two of you. There may have been 4 cuts in it. You can go up and down the line, scenes where it was just about playing it. So, at some point, whether it's improv or whether it's just they're doing what they're doing, we know we're not going to cut away. So whatever happens, happens, and we get it and we go with it.
And how scary are those moments for you guys when you have the freedom to not look at the page? I can't imagine what that feels like. It must be amazing and really frightening. And does anyone speak to that?
Why me?
Because you're so good.
Yeah.
You
How
have
did
to
that
be.
happen?
You have the glasses.
I have the glasses.
Yeah.
I know, I have like brown hair and glasses. Do you guys think I'm really smart? Actually, it is very frightening because I didn't know it was a convention from back then. I wasn't born then. But you do, as an actor, I do rely on it because you kind of go, they're coming in wide and then they get closer and you kind of save your good stuff for when they get in closer. And it was season 1 where I went, where's the coverage? I was like, there's no coverage. And I've told this story, but we were doing a scene season 1 with Tim and I on the side of the road, and we parked the car, and it's kind of one shot where we go and we're having this fight on the side of the road. And John was shooting it in 1. And my blood ran cold because I thought, what if I'm bad? And I kind of went up to John, and I went, what about if you get a shot of the grass or a shot of the sky, or a bird on the fence, and you can cut away and then come back? And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it in 1. And I said, okay, but what if I'm bad? And he really went, don't be bad. I was like,
Great advice in general, actually.
There's something very liberating, though, about the style of the show in most TV, in most movies now too, but especially most TV. There's a rhythm that's very you get very accustomed to. It's like if you're not speaking, you're generally not on camera,
Right.
And that can seep into you, and you start tailoring what you do to that because you know that you have to do what you want to do when you're talking.
Right.
And the fact that on this show you have no idea when you're going to be on camera. You could be speaking for pages and never be seen.
Oh my God.
Or you could not have a word in a scene and it's all on you. And so that is simultaneously incredibly, bone-shakingly terrifying and freeing because then you can't worry about it anymore.
And Elvis, for you, when you see the final product, are you struck by, God, that's completely different from how I envisioned it, or does it look the way that you think it would look when you see the scenes played out in their final cut?
Not at all.
What surprises you the most when you see it in its completion?
Everything.
Really?
Everything. I was just talking to Michael outside, and we would just powwow really quick, and he asked me, so what do you think about the documentary? And I mean, the Inside American Crime, and I just said to him, I've forgotten like how powerful and how emotionally driven this piece is.
You filmed last fall, is that correct?
Yes.
August. Okay.
Yes.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while. Okay. But just like Connor said, you're in a setting that you might have two cameras going. I'm not in any way thinking about what camera is on or what camera is pointing which way. I think that the setting that we have created when we shoot is such an atmosphere that the actors just feel just very free and liberated to just go at it and do the work that we've been doing for season 1 and 2. So I'm always blown away by when I watch the final product. So kudos go to the team. They have put this stuff together, because I just don't know how that happens. I just show up and be like, where do I stand? What's my line? Let's get to it.
The magic is left to them.
It's a collective effort, but as an actor, I'm just focusing on not messing up the writer's lines and not adding my own stuff. So I never have to do that. It's really all a great recipe that any actor would love to be part of. So I'm truly blessed every day that I'm part of something so amazing.
And Michael, I want to talk about the episode with the testimonials from the teachers and people who had survived gun violence. That was an amazing hour of TV. And directed by Kimberly Pierce, correct?
Yes,
Which was a perfect person for an episode like that.
Right.
Just the sheer logistics of this are so fascinating. First of all, how did you go and find these people to participate? And what was that process like in actually gathering all the anecdotes? And how did you winnow them down? Because I have a feeling there was probably a lot of footage we didn't see in that 1 hour.
I think we have to give a lot of credit to a young man who works with us named Giovanni Jimenez, who worked for John and I, and he worked with the guy who wrote the Columbine book. And
Dave Cohen, who wrote the very harrowing and definitive account of what happened at Columbine, and has he's part of who he is as a writer is making connections with people who have suffered, just unimaginable tragedy, and being able to speak with them and interact with them in a way that is not patronizing and not demeaning. And really lets them have a voice, and he was instrumental. So Dave, Giovanni, when I say the entire crew, if you can imagine having individuals of all different backgrounds, parents, students, transgender kids, a mother who lost a son through bullying, and you ask him, you try to say to him, we want to incorporate this into a TV show. You can imagine, initially people are like, television, by its nature, in some aspects, can be exploitative, and we did not want to do that. So it took a lot of people to sit, to talk, to let folks know that all we're going to do, as we do with our performers, just roll the camera, say what you want. It's not about our opinions. It's not trying to say what we want you to say what you want. So I'll let Michael tell a story about getting these folks together. But Dave, Giovanni, the entire crew, setting a space where they would feel safe was first and foremost the most important thing.
And John, correct me if I don't get this right, but one of the things that John does and challenges in the writer's room is he brings real people into the room that have experienced these things, whether they be Wade Davis, who actually made an appearance. Yeah. He's an out NFL player that talked a lot about that. There's rape counselors. John brings those people into the room so that the writers can meet the real people. And I think when that was happening, and John had this design of let's bring some real people to help tell the story. So Giovanni spent time with Dave and brought together this various types of people, and we brought them all together to Austin. We didn't go out to them, brought them together, put them in a hotel together. They spent some time together so they all could meet each other and share stories, and Dave and Giovanni were a lot their mentors, and spent time with them, and then we shot in a room for a whole day. And I was in that room for a period of time. I couldn't stay in that room. I found myself so drawn to these people, and they each told, 45 minutes to an hour worth of their story. And Dave and Giovanni sat in there, and then, John, and the editors sat with all this footage and found the right places and put it all there, and it was somewhat magical. But, it's all part of the whole experience that John does, which is make this process an experiential thing for everybody, and so that we all are blessed to give part of ourselves to it. And I think that's true filmmaking and cinematic filmmaking is capturing the bits of everyone's soul, and that's why it feels special, because you can feel it, and it's something that's magical. And so I think bringing the reality of those people's pain and to that episode was just a really powerful thing that came out of John and the writers' room from their experience of meeting these real people.
I think it's safe to say the show is a role model in terms of seeing diverse faces on camera, crew, writers, directors. I watch every credit, I watch every name of when I watch TV, because I'm keeping track and I'm keeping score. And I'm looking up people on IMDb to see who the people are behind the shows that I'm watching. And I'm wondering, for the actors, how does it impact your work when you come to set and you see equal numbers of women, you see gay people, you see people with dark skin, you see people with light skin? This is not the regular experience. It's changing slowly. But anyone can just let me know how this makes you feel when you're in an environment like this, because it's definitely not common.
Well, you know, I've never been on a television set before.
Tell everybody before you did this show, what was your other...
My job?
Your acting job.
Your other acting...
Yeah, your other acting job.
My first acting job was at Walt Disney World, and I was Princess Jasmine. Which is entirely different from Evie, but it was fun.
But that was your other job. You went from that
I went
to
from that,
performing
and I moved to LA,
these individuals.
and
wow.
I'm thankful for you and Michael for giving me this job.
Literally a whole new world, you might say.
I love
Nice.
Wow.
Well done.
Applause for that.
It just came to me. It just came to me.
Well, you know, to answer the question, even though I've never been on a set before, I can't imagine not working on a set like the one that you two created. I mean...
Oh, get ready for it.
I know, Gina's like... I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I love... Yeah.
You got spoiled.
I am spoiled, because the atmosphere that you two created and the people, all of the wonderful writers and directors that I met, just to see and just to hear these writers and directors, and I talked to one writer before, Sine Hoffman, and she opened up to me about a story that inspired Evie's experience at the party, and she really told me how she felt at this party and how she was, felt so different and that she didn't belong because of this color of her skin and where she was from and the neighborhood she was from. And just to have a writer be that open and honest with me, it completely changed my performance that day. It helped me wildly. And it also gave me insight, like actual experience as to what Evie went through. So it helps me tremendously. And just to see all the different faces, every episode, it was every person was so uniquely different and very special. So it was an honor to have that type of variety and work with artists that ranged from all different backgrounds.
It's just real. Yeah, it's just real life. It represented the world and how it actually is, not how most people tend to portray it. So.
And it's got to come from the head, and that's what John and Michael did, and it's got to come from the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everyone should follow what these guys are doing.
Yeah.
When you look at the audience, you see the face of America. You see so many different people, different colors, different hair texture, different everything, lay, gay, lesbian, and I think that the title, the first part, American. To show in itself and everything that we've been doing, and to have such a diverse, actors, writers, crew, everybody gets down in the true sense of the face of America. So I think that's what makes the show so special, that we're telling everybody's story.
And Richard, you have a unique backstory in how you got into this business. What does it mean to you to be not only back for season 2, but to continue to push yourself in this new life in which you find yourself?
I mean, coming back for season 2, I was just so blessed to come back and for John and Michael give me the opportunity to not be the bad guy.
Definitely never seen a computer guy like this on TV. Yes, it's very cool.
So, and it was just the excitement. I remember the first day being back. I mean, the first day being back, like Michael not even recognizing me, and like I'm just walking right by. And I walk by again, and Michael! And then it was just beautiful for him, for that. And then I remember being working with John that day, and the excitement in his eyes, and him just like hugging me, you know, and like a pops, you know, like and just being excited to have you back, and it was just a really great feeling, and for just believing in me, you know, that believing in a person can really like just push them to the next level, and I feel that I've been pushed to the next level, and welcome me with open arms.
I was very impressed the concealing of the tattoos. There was no hint of it. That was really incredible.
Yeah.
Was that done with CG, or did you
No, we did it. We usually, and the thing is, our actors are, and it's a weird thing to say, you know, bravery and talk about physical appearance, but unfortunately, and particularly in the TV space, you know, that's part of the trade of actors, is looking a certain way. And all of these folks, there were just moments, you know, we do almost no makeup and no hair, which actually still takes work to find out, you know, what is natural and what is appropriate for that day. It's almost, in some ways, more work for our hair and makeup, because it's not just, well, here's the look and this is what they have every day. What are they actually doing that day? Where are they going? Where are they emotionally? And what fits that individual? So for a large part, there was just a very emotionally appropriate makeup. But for Richard, you know, we sat down. You know, like, how long is this going to take every day? Everybody really came together. Richard, always last year, we had a big scar and we had to track that. Richard was like the guy that, you know.
He's your canvas.
He was the guy, you know, for hair and makeup, it was, you know.
I was in there.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, my trailer was
Richard on the call, she was like, oh, okay. But it was great. You know, everybody had, everything was very bespoke. Everything was very, very individualized, not just for their characters, but where their characters were, and that was really great to make things special. And it wasn't like, and all the things that the crew would do, there weren't those days where it was like, okay, we did it like this yesterday, we did it like this last week, we're doing it again. Everybody was excited about where people are and tracking the stories and really being into it. And then the crew would come with ideas, and what about this? That's what you want, is for people across the board to come with ideas and enthusiasm, rather than, you know, hey, it's great, we love what we're doing, but you know, we did it last week, we did it last year. That was the thing, even when we started the year, because in every department it was about not just, oh, Felicity's back or Regina's back. It's, you know, I mean, Regina last year, the look was so much about the eyes. You know, she had a hijab and she was very modest. And this year it was, who is this, you know, an executive at a pharmaceutical company, and doing all that and getting those things right. Whether people knew what she was doing specifically, Regina sat down with executive at a pharmaceutical in Indiana and spent time talking. Whether the audience knew or not, you knew what the job was and what was being done. That was absolutely amazing across the board for all of these individuals.
And I would love to know from everyone besides John, what would surprise everyone to learn about what he's like as a boss on set?
Get up for a moment.
I'll start with that. You know, I first met John in 2011. It was when I first met him. We worked on another project, and what I've learned from John is loyalty, and the fact that he really has mapped everything out and knows exactly the story, the characters, and how everything is moving forward. When I got the role for Principal Chris Dixon, you know, that's all I was told, you know. And when I got to Austin, I was like, you know, hey, you know, I want to meet with John, and I want to meet with John, you know, because I want to pick his brain. And I sat in his office, and we spoke for about 45 minutes. And when I walked out of his office, I was like, so who's this Chris Dixon again? You know, but it's the fact that, you know, you're working with someone that wants to keep you present, and you know, you just know that you can trust John because he knows he's going to lead you in the right way. And that's what I've learned throughout the years.
Lily, how about you?
Oh, I could just talk and talk and talk. I mean, I think he's going to go down as one of the best showrunners, for sure. I think that I can ask him anything, and he will have an answer.
Wow.
And one thing, well, I knew I was going to be great when, well, first of all, he gathers the whole crew and says, everybody, and says, I want to thank everybody for being here. I respect that you're here. I'm going to do my best. I want you to do your best. Nobody does that. And then the last thing I'll say is when Connor and I were rehearsing with John in the office, and we were reading through a scene, and there was just one little moment that was just like, I just felt like a little thing, just a teeny bit off. And I thought, well, and then John was like, we ended, and he's like, I gotta work on this. This little beat here, I gotta work on this. And I was just like, oh, I didn't even just say anything. So I could just go on. If anyone wants to talk to me about John afterwards, I'd love to.
She's also his publicist, so.
Yeah, I can't say enough.
And Joey, how about you? A thought on John?
Gosh, as a newer cast member, to walk into a show and really not know what the set environment is going to be like. I did a TV show as a comedy. It was the last thing I was doing, full out slapstick comedy, things like this. So I had no idea. But what I really found with John is just a generosity of spirit. I couldn't believe that he was trusting at 21. I was coming at 21 and having this character is going through so much, and there's so much emotionality and so much meat to bite into, and to have him be so generous as to trust the actor and trust all of us and have those moments to really speak with us about what that would be. That was unlike anything I've ever been with. That's such trust, and it helped me go, okay, this is way bigger than me. This is the story, and that he is so earnestly about that is a fantastic leader.
He's also just nice. Like they're.
What is this word?
Like,
I'm not.
He hired a masseuse one day to come in and
God.
for the crew. I think the show, John is a lot like the show in the first glance. It's it's very serious and focused and almost clinical and very exacting. But the more you get to know it, and the more you pay attention, the more you realize that it's like those things are superficial and that it's really just very kind.
Wow.
I will say, though, the one thing that you don't know, but it's a positive thing, that he's always on time.
Wow.
He's always on budget. And that is very important. As you say, he's one of the great showrunners. I have met many, many showrunners in my years who have produced great television. But you can't always say that they're responsible financially or responsible for their time or responsible for anyone else's time. Because I think great showrunners also respect that everyone else's time is just as important, and part of that is being on time and on budget. And I don't know a lot of shows that I've run into many shows and supervised many, many shows, and it's a rare thing, So.
And unfortunately, we're running out. Fully embarrassed John.
He also has clothes other than gray too.
Oh, he does.
I've never seen him.
Never seen him.
Never seen any.
I saw this on the set every day. I see it here.
Last year,
But what?
for
Yeah, go. You
Halloween-
tell Regina.
Halloween, the cast and crew dressed as John. Everyone wore gray.
And luckily, I was wearing gray that day,
Yeah.
so it worked.
But the weird part is you didn't notice for a little bit.
I'm the most oblivious. Everybody's working hard. I'm just walking around. I'm the most oblivious guy.
We're like,
Yeah. I'm like, hey, John. Hey, yeah. Did we shoot that scene? Okay, great. How'd that go? Did it turn out all right? Yeah.
not anymore. Oblivion ends today. And then finally, I know we're all wondering, what is the status of season 3? When will we know something?
Have you heard anything?
I haven't.
Is Channing Dungey out here?
So the upfront's in a few weeks, so we'll hopefully have some intel on that day, May 17th, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, you're useless. You're not going to give us any information.
Yeah,
You know as much as
yeah, we honestly have no idea whatsoever. It's
Okay.
been an amazing 2 years. Everybody here has been so supportive. People out there have been just amazingly gracious. So, I think everybody who was around in that first season says to a person, particularly those who were on the pilot, nobody thought it would get picked up. Nobody thought it would go 3 episodes. I never thought I would work with a collection of talent like this. I never thought, if anybody had told me a year ago that a network show in the first year would have such positive peer review, and then in and among such recognition that African-American woman playing a Muslim American would be rewarded with an Emmy in this toxic, intolerant environment that we find ourselves living in. You know, if all I walk away from with all that is these relationships, working with these individuals, having even that much recognition, then it was the best spent 2 years in my professional career that I've ever had. So, you know, there may be more, there may not be, but I don't know what more we can do. I certainly know the stories that we'd like to tell. I know the communities we'd like to visit. I know the urgency that we'd like to bring to it. But if in these 2 seasons we've talked about, one of the things, I'll just say this, we wanted to put as much conversation in every episode as we could. So in 2 years to talk about race, class, faith, Christian, Catholic, Muslim, gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic. You know, we always looked at if this is all that we could possibly do, we will do as much as we can. And I think all these folks here represent what we tried to accomplish and represent it so well.
I agree.